Good morning, Santa Rosa Adventist Church. It's Pastor Don. I want to welcome you again to our Sabbath morning church service. I want to thank Daniel and Carly for the wonderful worship they brought us this morning. I'm praying that it opens your heart to the word that God is providing. I am also, though, I'm really excited because next Sabbath we are going to begin the regathering process, the regathering journey, and we will be doing that on June 20 and June 27. We will be gathering at 11 a.m. outdoors on the campus of the Redwood Adventist School on Mark West Road. So our plan is to gather outdoors for a couple of Sabbaths, have the dialogue around what it looks like to regather in the building, but we will worship, we will share in word and testimony, we will give waves and kind of distance high fives, and we will broadcast the service there from the campus. We will broadcast for those who continue to shelter in place. We want to honor the health of all our members, and so for those who continue to shelter in place, we will provide the video feed for that from the campus. So next Sabbath, we begin the regathering of the church, June 20th at 11 a.m. on the campus of Redwood Adventist School on Mark West Road. I was so thankful. I was so thankful for Ray Tates and the word that he shared as we begin a little bit of a shift in response to the tension in the world, the conversation that's being had in the world around race, and the desperate need for us as people of faith to lean into this conversation, to listen, and in listening, getting knowledge, gaining understanding, and understanding leads to transformation, and where we may react and respond in ways of love that bring healing. And so last Sabbath, we began that conversation and invited my friend Ray Tates as he shared just powerfully. If you haven't seen it yet, go to our Santa Rosa Adventist Church YouTube channel and take a look at the service from last week where he talked about the shout, how the shouting out and where the people around Jesus pushed back against the man who shouted out, and Jesus leaned into the cry. And in leaning into the cry, he engaged, Jesus engaged, and he brought healing. Our need to, lean into the shout. And there are voices that are crying out. There are voices that are crying out in real pain, in real suffering. And we as a faith community, we as individuals of followers of Christ, we need to lean into those voices with a posture of listening and genuine care. And in the listening, that we might come to understand, that we might come to some knowledge, and in knowledge that brings transformation, and transformation that leads us to love in healing ways. But starting with, we need to start with what our posture is when we hear the shouting, right? What is our posture? I'm thinking of John Gottman, the marriage counselor who has done thousands of hours of research and around marriage and relationships. So many thousands of hours that he has gotten so good at looking at the conversations of couples that he can determine up to 90% correct on if those marriages and relationships will stay together. I mean, it's phenomenal, but he's gotten it down to the point where he can look at the body language as couples communicate. He can look at the body language, and based on what he calls the four horsemen, not of the apocalypse, but, maybe of the apocalypse of a relationship. The four horsemen, he calls them, of a relationship, and the language that they bring out in one's body. The four horsemen are criticism, and the second one is contempt. The third one is defensiveness, and the fourth one is stonewalling. So he is able to tell by a person's posture in the dialogue. They can posture this posture of criticism, and then of contempt. You know, that posture of contempt being, you come already to the conversation full of contempt for the person, or you come to the table already with, to the conversation, you come to the conversation already ready to be critical. You come to the conversation already, your posture is already defensive, you're ready to defend where you're coming from, or you already come to the conversation where you're just stonewalled, you're not listening, you're just there and you've shut down. And I think this gives us a glimpse into when we talk about this, the issue of race. And there's so much conversation and yet noise going on around this conversation. It is important for us to deconstruct and get a posture of leaning in that is productive. And I think about the scriptures, and I think about Jesus, and where does Jesus show and model what it is to lean into a conversation, right? And one of the most beautiful interactions that's so close and dear, that I love the interaction he has. And it is portrayed so powerfully in the video series, The Chosen. If you haven't had a chance to watch this series yet, the first season is out. We'll have links on our website, and we'll have links on our Facebook page to this video series. It is the life of Jesus in the book of John. And I just got to tell you, this has been an incredibly insightful, powerful, and moving storytelling of the life of Jesus. And in the final episode of season 1, episode 8 of season 1, he meets the woman at the well. And we're going to put a little clip on our Facebook page today where you'll see that interaction. But that interaction, it's found in John 4. That interaction is so profound and powerful to me because it is Jesus modeling what it is to lean into a conversation, that is lean in a caring way, in a genuine way, that is not critical, that is not full of cynicism, that is not defensive, and it is not stonewalling. He comes to this conversation and he's going to model it, and he's specifically modeling it for his disciples. Well, and as the story goes in John 4, right? John 4, chapter 4, verse 1. Now Jesus learned that the Pharisees had heard that he was gaining and baptizing more disciples than John. And although in fact it was not Jesus who baptized, but his disciples. So he left Judea and went back once more to Galilee. So he's going to go back to Galilee. Now, the tradition is for the Jewish people, they would never cut straight through. You know, the shortest distance between 2 points is straight, right? Is a line. Well, to follow where he's at, to go to Galilee, would mean that he would have to go through Samaria. Now, for the Jew, it was impossible to go through Samaria. It was distasteful. It was abhorrent to go through and be even in contact with the Samaritan people. There is strong racial bias, bigotry, hatred towards the Samaritan people, and it comes from a long history with the Samaritan people. But Jesus does something incredibly profound here, right? Now, he had to go through Samaria, so John said he had to. Because when you're Jesus, when you're God incarnate, you got to go through Samaria. And he has to go. I think John is saying, listen, he had to go through some. No, he didn't have to. But John knows, you know what? In hindsight, he had to. Because he had to lead his disciples through a transformation process. He had to lead them in and through a modeling of what it is to confront something within yourself, to confront your own biases, your own cynicism, your own critical spirit, your own defensiveness, to deconstruct your bigotry and bring you to new understanding of all people created in the image of God. And so John says, now he had to go through Samaria. So he came to a town in Samaria called Sychar, near the plot of the ground Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired as he was from the journey, sat down by the well. It was about noon. Now we got to remember the disciples at this point, the dialogue must have been interesting. Again, if you watch the series, the final episode, I Am He, episode 8, you're going to see how this gets set up. It's phenomenal. And the disciples have left him there at the well, and he has this interaction that is incredibly profound. When a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus, verse 7, Jesus said to her, "Will you give me a drink?" His disciples had gone into town. Oh, in this moment, Jesus is going to lean in to a conversation that he wants to have with this person. Because he wants her to understand, but he's modeling for us about what it is for us to come to understanding. And what is so powerful here is Jesus, first of all, how does he begin? He has a need. He thirsts. He has a thirst, but he does not have the resources to quench the need to fulfill his thirst. So he has this need, and this other person, this person that, well, is the minority, right? And only that person can meet the need that he has, because she has what it takes to get down and get the water. It is such a powerful example of how to lean into a conversation. And so he has this interaction with her, and it begins with she can meet his need to quench his thirst with what the resources that she has. So Jesus has this incredible dialogue with her, right? And he's not critical. He doesn't hold her in contempt. It's such a beautiful interaction. He's not defensive. He doesn't stonewall. He's leaning in and understanding her, and then he's bringing her healing. He's bringing her affirmation. He's understanding her condition, and he's not condemning her. He's not critical of her. It's an incredible example of what it is to lean into a meaningful conversation. Now, with any story of the scriptures, right, we look at those stories and we want to place ourselves in the story. And it would be nice to say we are Jesus in this story, but we're not. He's simply modeling. He's modeling something for us, because the disciples are going to come back and they're going to see this interaction, and it is going to be transformative. He is deconstructing, and I got to be honest, that's who I am. I'm the disciple. And I really believe what he's modeling, look, you need to deconstruct and deconstruction of your ideologies, of your biases, of your bigotry that you may not even be aware of. But you need to come and lean into the conversation. And you begin by not being critical, right? You begin by defining what it is, maybe what you need. And what you need, disciples, is you need some understanding. And this person, this woman, this Samaritan woman, is the only one who can bring you to understanding this. Understanding brings transformation that leads to healing acts of love, right? Such an amazing story. And so wherever you are on this conversation of race, wherever you fall on the spectrum of this conversation, because there seems to be, really a broad spectrum of where people are at in this conversation. Wherever you are, I challenge you this morning to ask yourself, am I being critical? Do I have a critical spirit in my interaction in this dialogue? Am I bringing contempt to the conversation? Am I contemptuous? Am I defensive in this conversation? And when this conversation gets going, am I leaning in, but leaning in a defensive way? Or am I just stonewalling? Am I not leaning in, fully engaged, open, wanting to understand, wanting to know, so that I can come to understanding and bring what brings true healing, the love of Jesus. So, Santa Rosa Church, I'm praying that as Jesus modeled, that we will lean into this conversation around race, around the importance of all created in his image, and that from that we will begin to understand what needs to change, first and foremost, in our own spirit, so that we can live out true love that brings transformation and healing to all. I'm praying that happens, and I'm praying that God's grace and peace be yours